Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both. I hope you're having a lovely week so far.
So lovely.
Absolutely. How about you, Tanya?
I am doing well, getting over a little Humboldt crud, so I think my voice is starting to come back to me, and I'm happy for that.
Indeed.
Well, Thad, would you like to fill us in on what's coming to this week's cover story?
Yeah, this week we have a great feature story. Our digital editor, Kimberly Weir, who took a really deep dive into some local efforts to save an endangered butterfly. Let me tell you, these efforts are extensive. So she caught up with Christina Damiani, who is the Butterfly Conservation Program director at the Sequoia Park Zoo, and heard all about the zoo's role in kind of a much larger effort to save the Barron's silver spot butterfly, which, as I said, is an endangered butterfly that actually can't be found in the wild here in Humboldt, but can in parts of northern Mendocino County. So she caught up with Christina and heard all about kind of how the origin story of these efforts, and then the virtual army of volunteers that it takes to sustain them. So interestingly, this program really started in an effort to save the Oregon silver spot butterfly, an also endangered butterfly that can be found or used to be found in parts of Del Norte County and then southern Oregon. And so this program started as an effort to capture female butterflies in the wild, have them lay their eggs kind of in captivity, raise their eggs from larvae to caterpillars, and then until they change into butterflies, and then release them back into the wild. But the program kind of got started too late to save this population of Oregon silver spot butterflies that was in Del Norte County. And by the time it was kind of ready to launch, that population was already extinct. And the program is really about kind of helping support and provide a safety net for existing wild populations as opposed to replacing them. But all that kind of groundwork and framework was in place, and so they quickly pivoted to attempts to kind of bolster populations of the Barrens, which were quickly plummeting, wild populations. And they speculate that's the population decline is due to kind of a loss of habitat. When these caterpillars are out in the wild, they feed voraciously, and they feed on one type of green violet leaves, and they need, I guess, tons of them. And so both by the loss of habitat to housing and other development and stuff like that, and then just kind of changes in the existing habitat that kind of weeded out some of these violet plants. The speculation is that a lot of these caterpillars hatched and then just starved because there wasn't enough feed for them. And then also there's a problem with with poachers basically capturing rare butterfly species to sell on the black market. And so there's a belief that some of that happened. But anyway, they pivoted to this Barrens population, and I think this is the second full cycle, or maybe the third that this program is going. But like I said, they're have an arm that is kind of out in the field in Mendocino County and is capturing female butterflies, and then those are brought to the Sequoia Park Zoo where they lay eggs. These eggs have to be painstakingly cared for in petri dishes and controlled climates and everything. Basically because if there's a mold or a disease outbreak, it can quickly decimate the entire batch. Christina's days, it sounds like, are spent like going from petri dish to petri dish and cardboard receptacle to cardboard receptacle at various stages of the butterfly's life cycle to check and make sure kind of everything is going okay. And then once these caterpillars hatch, they need just an abundance of these green violets. And so they actually have whole teams of volunteers who all they do is pick these things and then really painstakingly wash them and clean them and prepare them to feed to the caterpillars. And then once the butterflies hatch, they are then very carefully moved down to select locations in Mendocino County. They are not publicly disclosing exactly where, again, because of the fear of poachers, but then they're released into the wild. And just a few weeks later, the effort begins anew to capture the females and bring them back to the Sequoia Park Zoo. One thing that's neat is for regular zoo visitors, there are a couple points in time during the year when kind of you can see this conservation effort in action, which is pretty neat.
It was definitely news to me that butterfly poachers were something that we had to contend with. Who knew?
Yeah, I mean, come on, people. Just let nature be. Yeah, I mean, I've seen those, those framed boards with butterfly specimens in them, but I never really imagined that might be the, result of nefarious poaching. It's just awful.
I also liked that, how folks can help was included in the article if they're interested in helping the efforts or the conservation itself. I thought that was great information, and I hope people get involved if that's something that they're called to.
Yeah, definitely. So Kim has a whole sidebar on what folks can do, and that's everything from kind of joining the volunteer army to wash violet leaves and feed caterpillars, all the way to just some basic things you can do in your yards that won't help the barren silver spot because they're down again in Mendocino County, but will help native butterfly species here. And that's everything from planting specific types of flowers to just kind of leaving some sections of your yard wild. We're doing that quite effectively in my yard at home, to leaving, some kind of leaf litter and stuff like that on the ground. So really encourage everybody to check out the full story behind this conservation effort, which really is pretty impressive. And then also checking out that sidebar to figure out what you can do.
Thank you, Thad, and to Kim for this story. And I encourage everybody to pick up this week's North Coast Journal and read the entire article. And Thad, you also have a not so spooky update, but an update on a mystery that continues to unfold.
A long, convoluted story that kind of raises more questions than answers. It's one of those things where every time you kind of uncover a new kernel of information, it just raises a host more questions. So I took another kind of dive into the ongoing saga of Eureka City Schools handling of its former Jacobs Junior High campus, the long defunct campus on Allard Avenue in Eureka. That regular readers, viewers, listeners will remember the California Highway Patrol had long been in kind of negotiations to purchase from the district. And then in December, kind of with no warning, all of a sudden the district school board meeting agenda included a negotiation with another party, AMG Communities Jacobs LLC, an entity that was just legally formed like 2 days before the meeting. And then voted at that meeting to enter into agreement with this LLC to offload the Jacobs campus in exchange for a small residential property on I Street in Eureka and a cash payment of about $5.4 million. They valued this entire deal at $6 million, which is about $2 million more than the last documented offer from the California Highway Patrol, and seemingly significantly more than the Jacobs property has been assessed at. So kind of a curious deal, and it's become kind of all the more curious since the board made that decision December 14th, because there's just no information coming out about who this LLC is, who's behind it, and what their plans are for the property. So actually just a couple days ago, the LLC, purportedly folks from the LLC created a website and posted a frequently asked questions section that really doesn't divulge much information. One of the questions on the FAQ is, who is behind AMG Communities Jacobs LLC? And the answer is, a small investment firm that has projects, that does business, but they don't actually say what those projects or businesses are or who this small investment firm is. So we've been really trying to figure out who's behind this. There's a ton of speculation because that property is included in the Housing for All initiative pushed forward by Security National, its owner Rob Barkley, and some downtown and old town business owners. That initiative, which will be on the November ballot, is aims to kind of block the city's plans to convert a bunch of city-owned parking lots into housing developments by creating kind of really arduous overlay zoning that basically makes any such project kind of infeasible. But in exchange, the initiative says, but we're going to rezone this Jacobs Avenue or this Jacobs Middle School campus for housing development. And kind of the knock on one of the knocks on the initiative had been, well, the city nor the initiative proponents don't have any control over this Jacobs campus, and it's probably going to be sold to CHP. And so kind of that, while the initiative seems to take housing away from Old Town and downtown, it pledges to kind of replace it with this development of Jacobs, and that seemed infeasible. And all of a sudden, with the sale or exchange of this campus, the campus to a developer, it seems like all of a sudden that's possible. So one of the things I learned in reporting the story is while we still don't know who's behind the LLC, the person who signed the property exchange agreement with Eureka City Schools on the LLC's behalf is an attorney by the name of Brad Johnson, who is the same attorney who has worked for the Housing for All initiative and a group, Citizens for Better Eureka, formed by Security National and Rob Barkley, that is suing the city of Eureka to try to stop these housing developments. So that seemed really curious. Should say that Security National's Rob Barkley, Citizens for Better Eureka, Housing for All have all kind of pledged publicly that they don't know anything about this mystery purchaser of the Eureka City Schools campus. Brad Johnson, we reached out to Brad Johnson. He sent us a statement saying basically that he has many clients. He's not at liberty to disclose who they are, but can say that they, in this case, the owner or operator of the LLC is not Security National or any of the initiative effort or the Citizens for Better Eureka effort. So maybe just a pretty extraordinary coincidence. We had no at this point.
Definitely would be an extraordinary coincidence. And Thad, we appreciate you continuing to put on your sleuthing cap and get us the answers in time.
Maybe one day the full picture will come clear.
Someday the mask will come off and we will find out who is that masked man or woman. Well, we appreciate your efforts. And before we pivot to the wonderful Jennifer and what she has for us this week, would you like to speak real briefly on some reporting that will possibly come out in next week or future North Coast reporting?
Yeah, absolutely, Tanya. We had some breaking news on Monday that Eureka police had engaged in an hours-long standoff with a barricaded suspect with some hostages involved. And so the story as we know it is that police were called to a report of, I think it was a 12-year-old boy with a stab wound. It turned out to be a laceration to his neck that thankfully is non-life-threatening. He was treated and it seems like he's going to be okay. But that led them to a residence with a barricaded suspect and 4 hostages, an adult female and 3 male juveniles, ages 4 to 12, I believe. Through negotiations, they were able to get the 4 hostages out of the house, it sounds like, and then unclear exactly what happened, but police ended up shooting 2 members of the the Sheriff's Department SWAT team ended up shooting the suspect, a 43-year-old man named Daniel Martinez, Don't really know at this point what kind of led to the shooting. We asked kind of EPD whether they forced entry into the house or whether Mr. Martinez exited the house, and they said kind of they can't tell us at this point. It's still under review. So a lot more information will be coming out about that.
Thank you, Thad. Definitely a very scary situation, and we'll be looking forward to uncovering more details in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. And with that, Jennifer, let's see what you have for us this week. It definitely sounds like you attended quite an event.
I know. It's a far lighter story than Thad's, let me tell you. But
we need the palate cleansing for sure.
We need a little something fun here. So I don't know if you've ever gone to a pop-up event.
I have not.
It's kind of a fun thing. Sometimes they're called pop-ups, sometimes they're called takeovers, etc. But basically, a chef or a restaurant comes in and cooks a meal in a new place for a night or two. And sometimes it's somebody who doesn't have a brick and mortar restaurant. Sometimes it's, a truck or an independent chef. We've written before about, like Rochelle Burgess was doing a pop-up at one point, and it's a real fun opportunity. And it's kind of like, it's more like an event. And when everybody kind of, everybody goes to opening night of a movie, and then like they clap in the theater, there's that kind of weird communal vibe. That's the thing that I like about a pop-up, is that everybody is there to kind of try something new, and everybody's going in with the best hopes and is a little bit, excited. And it's a kind of a social event. So anyway, the pop-up that I went to most recently this past weekend, was at Alchemy Distillery. And you're like, Alchemy Distillery? Wait a second. They just make booze. But in fact, this local craft distillery, which we've written about before, largely because of all their really cool kind of eco practices of, using, the cast off bread from Los Bagels and then sending their mash to, a farm to be eaten by pigs and all this other kind of cool, innovative stuff in the making of their liquors. But they used to have a tiny tasting room, which is to say that they had a little portion of their distillery where you could sit and sample like an ounce of something, right? And I mean, when I was talking to Amy Bonner, Amy and Steve Bonner are the owners and founders of Alchemy Distillery. When I was talking to Amy over the phone, I was like, yeah, I recall that space. There's industrial chic and then there's industrial, right? Like it was industrial. Stuff was being made there. But when this other spot opened up in the same kind of building complex, they have Alchemy Construction in one section, they have the distillery in another, and then there's this other spot that opened up kind of facing the road. It's like 330 South G Street. It's over like on the way to the March near Redwood Curtain Brewery. So as people say, over there. Anyway, they jumped on the space and started renovating. And of course, Steve Bonner runs the Alchemy Construction Company, but they're busy. So, and you've seen their signs all over the place, so they're busy. And so it took a long time to finally get it, because your own stuff always comes last. And they've put in this really cool space. They have this big hexagonal bar that's all metal and wood. And they've got lots of they ripped out everything, ripped out the walls, ripped out the floor. They put in, fancy concrete flooring that has radiant heat. And they have this big accordion wall up front that opens up to form a kind of an oversized giant window. And there's a counter spanning both sides, so you can sit inside at the window or outside at the window. And there are heaters overhead, so you can sit, in winter marsh weather and still sit outside, which is nice because you know what? COVID is around, people. It's nice to have some air circulation happening. So The pop-up that we went to was for Kogiri. You may have heard, Alex Yang, he is planning on opening up, it is formally called Kogiri Thai Fusion Korean Barbecue. So much happening in the former Harvest location. And he was like, who am I going to get to put barbecue, burners on all the tables and make the room pretty? So he called Alchemy. And while Alchemy was, putting together their first pop-ups, they had one with Maricela from Cocina Mariposa. Can't believe I missed that one. They had one with the South G kitchen truck, which was very cool, and I guess not far to walk because they're normally next door. And they said, do you want to come cook here? And he was really enthusiastic. And so we went to this night where you could have, this Korean Thai fusion, which included things like we had a really nice beef bulgogi, which is a lovely seasoned Korean beef served with rice. And things are a little different. So instead of the short grain Korean rice, there's jasmine rice, there's kimchi, there's things are a little changed up. And all of that is paired with or available with craft cocktails from the Alchemy folks. And they had that night, Amy always does some kind of cocktails on the theme of the meal that's going to come up, but she also has a couple slushy machines. So you could either have a straight Thai tea slushy, or you could have a spiked Thai tea slushy, which used Alchemy's clear whiskey, which was something they made while they were waiting for barrels to age. And it's just a very clean kind of alcohol that doesn't fight with a mixer. So anyway, that was really successful. And there were tons of people waiting in line, people buying tickets, and, things can move a little slow your first night in the kitchen. You know how it is with a new restaurant, like it takes a while for them to find their footing. You've only got 2 nights, so you better find it fast. But people were patient and just enjoying the vibe, and really it was kind of like, it felt more like being at a party than being at a restaurant. It's the new, the novelty of it, and the fact that it's temporary really makes you enjoy it in a different way. The Bonners have set up a pretty enticing kitchen to work in too. When I talked to Alex, he was saying that their kitchen was, I think the word he used was heavenly. And it has all these like crazy high-end range and, everything. It's small, but it is pretty fabulous. And that allows people, and it has, all the pots, pans, all the equipment you could possibly need. That allows people to, as Amy put it, show up with just your food and your knife bag. And once you're in, you can kind of do anything. So that, and the fact that Alchemy is only going to take a 20% cut for the pop-up, and the crowd is pretty big, it's a thing where they're both making money. Both Alchemy for hosting and selling drinks and taking their 20%, and for a chef who's coming and maybe getting to do something different than they normally do, or, getting their, upping their profile in the community. Yang was telling me that he really wants to build Kogiri's profile. He's done a couple of pop-ups at Plaza Grill, but he was saying that he, wants people to get a sense of what the restaurant is, so that when it opens, it'll have that oomph to it, and it'll have already some word of mouth. And it also allows you to spread out a little bit, to do things that maybe you wouldn't do at your restaurant. It also allows Alchemy to sell more drinks. As a distillery, if they don't have food, they can only sell like an ounce a day per person. But once they have food in-house, not that they want it to become a restaurant, they can sell alcohol just like a restaurant would. So it's really worked out for both sides of the pop-up, for the cooks and for Alchemy. And I hope it continues to do so, because it's really fun.
This sounds like such a wonderful collaborative effort, and you definitely had me at Thai iced tea slushies for sure. Well, thank you, Jennifer. And that wraps up for our time this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Go ahead and pick up your copy, read it cover to cover, or of course you can find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive here at our North Coast community.